I could say, and now for something completely different, because I was absolutely humbled by Annie's keynote. I don't think I'll ever achieve that level from a speaking point of view, but I'll try to entertain you and I'll try to engage you. But most importantly, this talk is all about empirical data, which is what people have been talking about earlier. And you can look at the title and say open access, one size did not fit all. Sort of sounds negative, but it's not meant to be negative. It's really, I'm going to show you some data from a survey that we did at Editage. It was a global survey, and the data really starts to pin home. We think of open access, and we think of the open access movement, but we think of it holistically as, okay, it's open access, everybody's doing it, right? And I'm going to show you that geographically, that message is being received very differently. So the pressures of open access, we all know them, we all hear about them. There's open access, you have open science, open engagement. We've talked about many of these different things, and the open engagement is moving towards, I often talk about citizen science, and that's going to change a lot of the dialogue and the landscape about what the quality and trust of science is that was talked about earlier. But so far, everything's being mandated open access, mandated calls for open science, increasing calls, not mandated, but open engagement, trying to get researchers out of their lab, talking to the peers, adjacent peers, public, policymakers, which is absolutely very important for moving the agenda of science forward and building trust in the academic community, or not the academic, but in the public community. But when one thinks of open access, as I indicated, it's not just one thing. Open access, yes, is making articles openly available upon publication, not behind firewall, openly promoted in many regards. But while so much effort is being exerted in a UK space, United Kingdom space, about pushing the open access agenda, that really is, I won't say isolated, but insular in some regards, because you're in your own echo chamber in the UK of feeling that everything's open, the whole world is just coming on board and everything's moving forward, but the data is quite different. And so the assumption that an author simply opts in or they don't, and open access framework is there, they either opt in or they don't, is not the way it is. There are subtleties of understanding or absolute lack of understanding of what open access is in some geographic areas. So at Editage, we do a lot of things. We do a lot of editing. We work with publishers. We work with pharma, doing a lot of medical writing, clinical trials. We're an author services company that is turning into a technology company, but we also do run surveys and do a lot of research on our own. And a survey that we ran, we found that the OA message is really not being received equally or in similar tone, and that's important. So there's equal and similar tone. So by tone, I mean the emphasis of the open access, the rationale why you would want to publish in open access in other countries, and hence there's geographic differences in the understanding of what open access means and also its adoption trends. So in this survey, it was a sub-survey of a grander survey that we did about author perceptions about the publishing industry, publishing in period. But of the grander survey, about 6,000 respondents were specific to open access questions. So we parsed those questions off and we ran it through SurveyMonkey. It was electronic, but we ran it in multiple languages: English, Japanese, simplified Chinese, Korean, Portuguese. And so in the geographic areas, in order to minimize misunderstanding of the questions, the respondents were responding to a survey in their own language. So theoretically, a lot of the subtleties and bias may have been removed. And the data was collected globally, but the major countries that have any numbers of significance were Brazil, China, India, Japan, South Korea, United States, United Kingdom. And those are the 7 countries that I'll report upon today. Now, in the interest of time, I have 30 minutes, and so I'm not going to go into all the details of the survey. I'm not going to present a lot of graphs and tables. I will present some, but I'm specifically going to cherry pick some numbers that are actually quite revealing about these geographic differences. So overall, survey respondents, those who had published in open access, yes said 45%, no said 35%. And so OA advocates may say, okay, well, the pendulum is swinging in our direction. And that's great that 45% said yes, they had published in open access. But the hidden numbers are that 9% reported they didn't even know what open access was. Now that's 9% globally. So 9% of researchers globally, as an average, did not even understand what open access was when it came to publishing. That's pretty concerning. And so when you look at the geographic differences, the bar chart sort of all over the place, but I'll point out some interesting points. And we covered the 9%, but clearly Brazil, huge open access initiatives here, and United Kingdom seem to surpass most of the noise around. And it makes sense from a Brazilian point of view with Cielo and huge emphasis on open access and a huge amount of conversation surrounding open access and peers publishing in open access. It absolutely makes sense. In the United Kingdom, huge peer pressures and funding pressures and other things to publish in open access, and that makes sense. Don't get bogged down in all the other numbers. I'll go through them one by one, but I just wanted to point out that the places that have active open access publishing models are swaying the general population researchers to publish in open access. It is sort of going with the flow, so to speak. But why publish an open access journal? If you ask the respondents who choose to publish in an open access journal, more than 60% of the authors in almost all geographic areas said that they wanted their paper to be read by a larger audience. Good news. The education of the fact that open access is giving you eyeballs and making you visible is permeating across much of the world. More or less 60% across all countries, except South Korea at 37%, with a reasonable amount of response rate. Why is South Korea not opting into the understanding of why to publish in open access? Instead, 71% of the South Koreans said, I choose a journal that is the best fit for my paper, and it happened to be open access. So here now you're getting into cultural pressures and peer pressures, cultural pressures, understanding of what open access is versus the historical premise of what impact factor and other forms of publishing subscription models may represent. And that's one of the first chips against the iceberg as to that the permeation of the concept of open access is not equal. If you look at the UK as a best case scenario and you say, okay, authors who have published in open access journals acknowledge that they preferred the open access model of publishing, so 54%, the most left-hand bar, and that they wanted the paper to be read by a larger audience, 63%. Okay, good news. Again, the inference of why to publish in open access is permeating through. We put in sort of a trick question about the journal guaranteed publication, the second bin. That sort of pointing to predatory publishing, where guaranteed publication. We were wondering whether the researchers were going to fall into the trap and who fell into the trap geographically, not fall into the trap of necessarily predatory publishing, but fall into the trap of just surveys, ticking off things. And so that was our validation that, one, there was an increased understanding of predatory publishing and that you can't guarantee publication. And it's certainly not a reason to publish in an open access journal that guarantees publication. However, while as best case scenario for the UK it being 4%, other countries range from 5 to 10%, and in China a whopping 18% published in open access journals because they were guaranteed publication. And again, another big tick mark of concern about geographic differences in what their perception of open access is and what their peers around them are telling them what they can do by using open access or publishing in open access. And that erosion of trust around predatory tied in with open access in a China market who is now publishing more papers than any other country in the world should be of concern. So continue to look at the UK, and if you had published in open access, or if you never published in open access, why? And so the None of them in the UK indicated that they didn't understand open access publishing. Bin number, left-hand bin, 0. That's a big gold star there. And if they had not published in an open access journal, the reasons for doing so is they couldn't afford the processing charges. Well, if the UK, and you'll see some other countries, are reporting that they can't pay for APCs, and yet other, what I'll call poorer nations, are able to pay for APCs, you ask yourself, well, is it really a monetary issue or is it a psyche issue as to why the APC charge seems to be such a hurdle? Is it a scapegoat or is it real? And that's something that the survey didn't delve into, but something that we should consider. They never published in an open access journal because their paper, the best fit for the paper happened to be a subscription journal. Okay, I get that, and that's fully understandable. But this latter point is very telling. You know, why, if you understand open access publishing, and yet 1/3 seem to choose not to publish an open access journal or feel shut out because of article processing charges, you know, where are the barriers? Why are these barriers to not publishing open access when theoretically they fully understand the value of the open access? So they understand the value equation. They opted in a much greater proportion. 2/3 opted in to open access, but the 1/3 who didn't have these barriers, and we have to think about why that is. So let's go into some of the other countries. Funding mandates. Well, very clearly the UK pops out at 37% of the 67 respondents. They were the lowest bin, but still 1/3 of it is substantial. But if you look at every other country that reported, you know, it's 4, 2, 7, I think the highest is 7%. That means that the UK is in a bubble where open access is being mandated by funders to a certain degree. Nowhere else in the world is this really happening of a great amount. And so, again, it gets to the education, it gets to the inference, the peer pressure to publish, and so big country differences, cultural differences regarding perception of open access because of what they hear about open access or don't hear about open access regarding any form of mandate. If you look at preference for an open access model of publishing and you say that a reasonable portion of authors had published in open access journals, said they prefer open access as a publishing model, anywhere from 30 to 54%, why is South Korea saying that they prefer an open? Why is South Korea saying that they do not prefer an open access model, and it's only 6%? And they publish an open access journal, but it's not the preferred means of publication. Again, what does that mean? What does that mean about the psyche of the author or the researcher in South Korea, that they fully understand the open access model, but it's not preferred? What are they missing in the equation? Are they not getting the information about the distribution, the open distribution, the eyeballs and other things? Are they relying solely on higher impact other brand name type journals? Again, the survey doesn't address this, but it's certainly something to think about in the geographic diversity. With respect to understanding the open access model of publishing, as I indicated, the UK, nobody mentioned that they didn't understand the open access model of publishing. Whereas in most of the other countries, maybe about 10% of authors indicated they did really understand open access model. But notably in Japan at 22 and China at 32, you have two major countries that are very high publishing output countries saying that they don't understand the model of open access. Now, where is the failure in the publishing or funding or other forms of information getting out there that you can have this much of a population stating that they simply don't understand the model of open access publishing in this day and age? I say this day and age because open access publishing, I'm guessing, is 15 plus years in mainstream. So could not afford APC charges. In India, the principal reason offered as to why they had not published in open access is they couldn't afford the APC charges. I get that to a certain extent in that area. But for the UK to be the second highest, I wonder what that really is all about. It could be real, it could be about funding, or it could simply be perceptions about all the rhetoric around APC and, oh, these APC charges are so expensive and hence, oh yeah, that's a real barrier to my publication. Well, when I was a researcher back in publishing in the 80s, page charges, color charges, for me to publish a paper in a quality high impact journal, it was like $4,000. And so to me, APC charges today are a deal, but no one perceives them that way. And so this gets back to the keynote and other talks where we are not projecting the proper value, or we're not projecting the value properly, I should say. And when you look at this gap of understanding, and I'm just comparing China and the UK here, especially bin number one, the UK, a lot of rhetoric and a lot of funding rhetoric, a lot of peer pressure around the understanding of OA, yet in China, it's not there. I travel China quite a lot, and there's a suspicion about open access in China. Maybe that suspicion is being dispelled somewhat with more initiatives by government and others pushing that open access is a way to go. But there's generally a low level of awareness and understanding in China. And now, given, as I indicated earlier, that China is the largest producer of research papers on a country level, and that the Chinese agencies, one sort or another, have actually been promoting open access more recently, it may not be surprising that they don't understand what open access model of publishing is. It's somewhat concerning. And it's somewhat concerning because we all know that trends change slowly, and it's not as if the masses of the Chinese researchers are going to be flipping to open access overnight. There's a very deep-rooted belief that impact factor is what needs to be chased, and that's what it is. I'm not saying good or bad, but the reality is it's going to take an incredible amount of education and awareness building, specifically in China, specifically because of the number of papers coming out of China, in order to move that trend or move that needle in awareness, understanding, and acceptance of open access publishing models. So food for thought, in my opinion, for OA to flourish, do not assume that the understanding of OA or the perceptions surrounding OA are the same around the world. They are not. And we have to accept that they are not. And we have to start looking specifically at country-specific models and country-specific strategies if, in fact, we want to promote open access publishing as a truly global mainstream means of publication. We need to, in my opinion, emphasize less the mandate of open access and promote the benefits. It's just like in sales. It's not about the what, it's about the why. And the why for open access is a solid story. So it's not about the stick of ensuring that you publish open access because policymakers and the public are asking for it. We as publishers should be really promoting the why, the eyeballs, the distribution, all the benefits that come with open access. And then if you promote the benefits of open access, then the APC charges come with that value as a value number, and then the hurdles of APC charges become less. I'm a firm believer, and I've written about it. If you follow my LinkedIn, you'll see many of my posts about it, that transparency in publishing in general, but transparency in open access will likely help build this brand confidence. And by transparency, I mean, when I submit a paper to a journal, I have no idea what happens behind the curtain. I have no idea that it has been screened for plagiarism or image manipulation. I have no idea how the decisions are made using Authenticate or Crossref in order to do a desk reject. I have no, as an average author, I have no idea of any of that. And in order to build brand building of your journals, you have to pull back the curtain, because you, in my opinion, you need to show the authors the value of publishing an open access journal. Here's what you are getting for your APC charges. Here is the rigor of which we go through, and this is why our journal, as an open access journal with these APC charges and solid peer review, is much better option for publishing than this other irresponsible journal who is performing deceptive practices around publishing. And so the greater they have the transparency, you will set the benchmark as to what quality open access publishing is all about, and the authors over time will begin to understand that and will gravitate away from predatory practices. APC affordability is partially reality, partially perception. There's an opportunity here now to wrap APC charges up with other upsell professional premium services. And so it's not just the APC charge. Do you want to also have video with that, or do you want to have an infographic with that? Would you like fries with that, so to speak? And reduce the emphasis on the APC charge and build the value proposition around what the author can do now that they are publishing in this open access journal. And that will then take the pressure off of the APC in isolation, that it's not just the absolute value of the APC, it's the perceived value of the full package in return of how my paper is going to be disseminated, number of eyeballs, the promotion that's available to it, social promotion using other tools like infographics and things of this nature. So in general, those are the types of points that I wanted to bring home. The nail that I'm trying to hit on the head is the absolute understanding that open access is not received or perceived equally globally. And education-wise, we need to target certain markets if we want to bring that level of awareness up.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our presenter, Mr. Don Samulack, a big round of applause.